Welcome to Business Zone, where we bring you happenings in the world of business across the continent. I am Tolu Lokpe Ogunjobi. Now, Germany has lifted travel advisory that was issued to warn its citizens to defer their traveling to Ethiopia, resulting from the unrest in the parts of the country. The country cancelled warnings following the restoration of peace and stability in Ethiopia, with news authorities in the Horn of African nation hoping that the United States and United Kingdom will follow suit soon. Just last week, report says millions of dollars has been lost in tourism revenue. Income from that sector has fallen by more than $7 million over the last quarter alone. The US and UK and the other Western nations issued travel alerts to their citizens against traveling to Ethiopia in the wake of huge and widening anti-government protests in the Oromia and Amhara regions. Ethiopia is currently under a command post that is administering the nationwide state of emergency. The curfew was imposed to quell anti-government protests that rocked parts of the country. Big buyers of Nigerian crude oil, Brazil, Canada, and United States have slashed their imports from the country. The latest report from the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation has shown sharp products purchase decline from the American buyers. The U.S., which overtook India in June as the single largest buyer of Nigerian crude, drops its import of the country's crude in August sharply. Out of the 5 regions buying Nigerian crude, only Western Europe, and Asia recorded increase in oil imports from the country in August. Analysts say that the cheap Iranian oil crude appears more attractive to oil dealers. Well, earlier, with an economist and the DG of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Muda Yusuf, who gave his view on this development.
The market may be competitive, but I think that for as long as there are good prospects for the global economy to grow and to recover, this should not be a major issue. The challenges in the global economy, for as long as there are prospects that economies will continue to grow and recover, for as long as you don't see any major disruption, particularly from the point of view of the recent elections in the United States, if it doesn't pose any major risk to the global growth and the global economy, I'm sure that what is happening either with Iran or with any other country may not constitute a major threat to us as a country and to our oil sales.
Muda Yusuf there. Now joining me via phone is an energy journalist, Samuel Ibiemi. Now, Samuel, do you support the position of some analysts that Iranian crude is now more attractive to oil dealers and this is taking them away from Nigerian crude? Would you buy that idea?
Hello?
Yes, Samuel, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Now, I'm talking about the some countries that have actually reduced the demand of Nigerian crude, and some analysts are saying this is because of the focus on Iranian crude, that many buyers are now more attracted to Iranian crude instead of buying crude from Nigeria. Do you agree that this is responsible for this development?
Actually, if you look at what is happening now, it depends, when you can have access to market easily, and where there is where the market is reliable, source of supply is reliable, definitely you want to focus on that. So I believe part of the problem we are having with US, Canada, and others concerning the drop in crude oil is the issue of reliability. That is, if they depend on us for crude oil supply, some of these refineries are really going to meet up with time. You know how many times Shell has actually declared force majeure? That is inability to be able to actually meet up with the agreement. And again, if you look at even the US and Canada, with the drop in crude oil, with the sudden rise in the crude oil price now, it's also becoming a bit profitable for shale producer. You know, anything above $50 a barrel, you see that it's now more productive to for shale oil producers to actually come on stream. So if you look at all these factors, it's not necessarily what people are looking at, but what is more important is also for Nigeria to also re-strategize to look at where our foods actually needed. And we look at China, because of the recession, so the global recession, the drop, you see that also their demand for crude oil has also reduced. So in essence, what we need to look at is to add value to our crude oil before we send our crude oil out of Nigeria. And when you are talking about adding value, that is to make sure that we invest in refinery. So if we invest in refinery, the government decides to invest in refinery and make the environment conducive for investors, definitely it will be more profitable for us, and then we'll be able to also create employment in country, so that you know the global factors, the effect of global factors on our crude oil sales will then reduce. Are you getting me?
Samuel, I can get you, but now it takes me to my other question. Now, do you, looking at this shale oil, which you've had...
Let me tell my location because you know it.
Okay, now, you've identified the issue of shale oil production. Now, is that not becoming a threat in one way or the other? Because if you look at the drops in figures, Brazil used to get about 2.92 million barrels. Can you hear me, Samuel?
Hello?
Samuel, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Now, I'm talking about the issue of shale oil. Is it not becoming a threat to Nigerian crude and other oil-producing countries?
No, like what I actually said earlier. I said shale oil is a threat. Shale oil is a threat to our own type of oil, because, you know, like shale oil, the development, investment in technology for production of shale oil in Canada and US is a continuous process. And, you know, one thing about shale oil is the fact that they also are investing in shale oil in order to reduce what they are spending on forex. Because when they buy shale oil from within the country, the amount of currency, you know, is stabilize their own currency. You know, anything you are buying from outside the country, you are investing in the currency of another nation. So whatever it is, if you look at the budget, you see that the government of those countries are also partnering some of the investors, and that's why they find that the price of crude oil is this thing. There is a direct contribution by the government to promote even the investment in shale oil. So shale oil is a threat to Nigeria's oil. You know, it's a threat, regardless of what. So what we need to do really is to invest in refineries in order to add value. You know, like when I was in the studio the other time, I told you when the budget was being planned by the National Assembly, I told you it's appropriate for our budget to be above $30 a barrel, despite all the opposition. And you can see today that crude oil is comfortable above $40 a barrel. So, but for us to gain more from this boom that is coming, really, it's better also for Nigeria to focus, because, you know, the oil and gas, oil industry is a cyclical thing. Price situation is to come up and down. And whenever there is a major infraction in any of the countries, any of the oil-producing countries, then really is going to affect. As of today now, the what is affecting price is the issue of demand. You know, demand, because of the recession. You see in China, you know, the demand has actually reduced, because if you look at growth, you see the growth rate, the economic growth rate is very marginal, you know. So, and when there is recession, it means the demand for crude oil will then be reduced, because the refineries will not be able to produce. So, but with what we have on ground now currently, maybe with winter coming, we can see a bit of increase in price of crude oil. But what matters so that Nigeria will not continue to receive what they call a shock, is for us to invest in midstream. That is, put the right investment on ground that will enable foreign investors to come in, invest in refinery, and then when we can be able to actually utilize maybe 80% or 70% of what we produce in country, we'll be able to add value. Then we'll be able to create employment. When we create employment, even the so-called host communities, they will see, they will see those investments as part of their own.
Yeah, Samuel, I must interject here now. Samuel BME there, an energy analyst, and is also an energy journalist there, giving his views on the drop in demand of Nigerian crude, particularly from some countries. Now we go on a break now, and we'll be back with more on Business Zone. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying tuned. You're still watching Business Zone. Now to other stories now. The National Economic Council meeting has endorsed a new funding regime for the oil and gas industry, eliminating the cash call regime that has stalled growth in the industry for about a decade. State House correspondent Maria Olashende reports.
The 72nd National Economic Council meeting was presided over by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo and had some governors and ministers in attendance. Council was briefed on how some revenue-generating agencies have engaged in various financial irregularities. The finance minister added that the financial abuses have been going on for a decade, and the practice is that agencies hide revenue that ought to go into the Federation account. She assured Council that such activities will now be exposed and terminated as directed by the President. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo also assured Council that the federal government is paying diligent attention to the issue of abuses and excesses of certain revenue-generating agencies, RGA. Minister of State for Petroleum Resources, Sir Ibe Kachukwu, also briefed Council about the alternative funding regime under which the technical cost of oil production in the country would also come down from about $27 per barrel to $18.
There are very dramatic effects. What you're going to find is that the southward slide that you've always had in terms of petroleum production will simply keep up and begin to go upwards. Oil companies will go back to activity. There will be resilience in the sector. There will be confidence in investment. Investments will come back. More jobs, and more fundamental really is that for the first time in the oil industry will take responsibility for arranging their own funding and being able to produce oil and save the federal government the whole budgetary nightmare of cash calls every year.
On the issue of the Ecological Fund, governors sought clarification about what criteria and under what circumstances was an alleged 2 billion naira distributed to some states by the last administration.
The Honorable Minister of Finance reported to Council that as at November 2016, the balance of excess crude proceeds stands at $2.4 billion. Also, that the sum of 1.1 billion was disbursed in the month of October to 35 states, and a total of 6.3 billion has now been disbursed to each of the 35 states of the Federation.
Therefore, convinced Council that on the need to provide financing, much needed financing to micro, small, and medium industries. When that is done, the micro, small, and medium industries have the capacity of improving the microeconomic stability of the nation.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo assured Council that the matter will be properly investigated, broadly reviewed, and forthright counsel would be made to the President regarding the matter. Maria Olashende, TVC News, Abuja.
It appears the Nigerian government is working on attracting private sector investment to grow the economy. Minister of Trade and Investment was speaking at the forum to unveil the country's growth and diversification plans. Lara Folayan reports.
1 year after the present administration came into power, the country remains in recession. Many say the authorities appear to be doing little in reviving the economy. But Nigeria's trade and investment authorities say a lot is being done to stimulate the economy. They say 21st century free trade agreements are being signed to expand the country's export base. Small businesses and agro businesses as well as allied industries are in focus too. The ministry says it is already in talks with the Bank of Industry to ensure these businesses get funding support. It says a lot is also being done to increase infrastructure investment spending in budgets.
Some people put the infrastructure need at anywhere from, 20, 30, 40, 50 billion to 100 billion. I mean, you pick your number. It depends on what assumptions you make in terms of how much power you think is adequate or how much railway line or road network. So we're extremely hungry for investment, and I think that is the message we're sending to you, and we will do everything possible to attract the right investments to the country.
Government says though much of its existing investment in areas like power will take time to yield results, it is positive that these investments will impact the economy positively. It also says the currently suspended export expansion grant will soon be revived. The country's commodity exchange is also being looked at by the authorities to encourage non-oil exports. The automotive industry is being given top priority as well for improved auto component production. The government says it wants to build sustainable institutions that will boost investor confidence at this time.
Investors, basically, when you are going through transition and turbulence, at times tend to be cautious. That's normal. That's normal. What we should be doing is to make sure we create the right environment to attract investment steadily, year in, year out, and through economic cycles. And that's exactly what we're doing.
The special advisor to the president on trade and investment says some policy initiatives are already yielding positive results in the area of doing business.
His Excellency the Vice President started working with the World Bank on the ease of doing business. And that endeavor has yielded some fruitful interventions. We're able to stem the tide of the slippery slope that Nigeria had been going down the rankings. I'm sure you would see that for the first time in about a decade, we stayed in the same position and we actually made some increase. We're not just interested in rankings. While rankings are good because they're a tool, we're interested in making Nigeria a progressively easier place to do business.
The trade and investment authorities say efforts are being made to encourage the use of Nigerian goods. The field management of the country's foreign exchange market will receive greater boost when the country becomes a producing nation. Lara Folayo, TVC News, Abuja.
And the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has charged entrepreneurs on the need to fill the wide gap in production and finishing of clothing in the country. They say this will help improve the marketability of made in Nigerian clothes in the international market and bring in more foreign exchange into the system. As the agency of government dealing with promotion of non-oil exports, its mandate is to play a leading role in creation of incentives meant to a means of tapping into this multi-billion-dollar market.
We need to fill the skills gap deficit we have in Nigeria. Because everywhere you go, there are jobs, but when you ask the companies, there are no skilled workers for it. And the same in the fashion industry. There are no skilled workers. You need pattern cutters. Our main goal is really to, we promote them. We promote our fashion, our design all over the country, but outside the country. But the most important thing first is to scale up production and productive capacity. And that is where we are right now.
Every single human being would have to be clothed in one apparel or garment or the other, from inner wear to outer wear. So if we do not produce it sufficient enough for the market would have to find its way out to get it. And we have seen, as investors in this industry, we've seen that we have huge amount of opportunities available to us, and we're moving to scale up our production capacity.
We started out with a group of people who really didn't have skills, but now they've been able to acquire the skills, but beyond the acquisition of skills, to be able to work in a factory where they really do understand what it takes to produce a garment from start to finish at a reasonable time, a reasonably commercially competitive time.
Sierra Leone is introducing austerity measures to combat economic challenges the poor West African nation is facing. The new measures by the government will see the reduction in government spending. The country had one of the fastest growing economies in sub-Saharan Africa in 2013. This is as a result of iron ore boom. The imbalance of government's budget caused by high public expenditure has led to cumulative high deficit. The new measures by the government are expected to reduce government spending. Many of the citizens are, however, doubtful if government spending would have any effect on the ordinary citizen. As the country braces for this economic meltdown, the International Monetary Fund has advised the government to reduce its subsidy on fuel. Reports by the United States Energy Department has shown the rise in stockpiles of crude oil above 5 million barrels, causing market price to drop slightly. But Russia says it expects price to pick up early at the London market. On Friday, the premium Brent crude trades for $45 per barrel as price weakens by more than 1%. The OPEC brand also trades downwards at $42 for a barrel. That's our package for you today on Business Zone. Join us another time for more insightful analysis. I am Tolulokpe Ogunjobi. I leave you with the figures of today's exchange rates as it stands. On behalf of the entire production crew, thank you for watching.